Hello everybody and welcome to another video in this Linux for Programmers tutorial series. In this video, what we'll be doing is talking about public and private key authentication for our server. So making it so we no longer need to type in the password for our user, but instead we are automatically authenticated using this special method, which is kind of a key pairing, which I'll discuss more as we get into that. We'll also be talking about how to access our file from FTP, so how we can use the file transfer protocol to transfer files to and from our server. So that's what we're going to be going through in this video. Let's get into it after a quick word from Linode, which is the sponsor of this video and this series. Now, as I've said many times now, Linode is one of the best companies to use when hosting a website, domain, or personal project. They have all kinds of integrations specifically for programmers, like deep support for Kubernetes and other developer things like Docker. Linode just makes it really easy to spin up servers. I've been using them for about 2 years. I have literally zero complaints, and whenever anything goes wrong or I need help, I reach out to their customer support team, which is active 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So claim your $100 free credit towards Linode by clicking that link in the description. Now, before we move forward, a reminder to sign up for the last 5 videos in this tutorial series. You know where to go, but there is a link in the description. You can register with your name and email, and then you'll be notified when these videos are available on this platform. Lastly, there is a guide for this video. This is actually a very helpful guide, especially if you just want more information about the stuff that I'm talking about here. Link will be in the description. All right, so let's dive in. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you how to, on Mac, set up this RSA key pair and log into your server using public and private key authentication. We'll talk about this more after I hop onto the Mac. Then after that, we'll go through Windows. Then we'll talk about the FTP. There'll be some timestamps in the description, so you can kind of fast forward and look at the relevant sections for you. Anyways, let's go over to the Mac. So I'm here on the Mac. What we're going to do now is set up an RSA key pair, which is simply a public and private key. Now, in case you're confused, what's going to happen here is we're going to generate the public and private key. We're going to store the public key on our server, and we're going to store the private key on this machine. Now, what's going to happen is when we sign into our Linux machine after we set up this public and private key, all we'll need to do is pass the private key to our machine. And in fact, we won't have to do this. Our operating system will just automatically do this for us. And then it will compare the public key and the private key together. And if there is a match, then it will authenticate us and let us sign in. This is typically a more secure way to do things, because if you have just a standard passphrase to sign into your computer or sign into your machine, that is vulnerable to brute force attacks. I can say personally, one of my servers was actually hacked with a brute force approach. So typically after you do this, what you will do is you will disable password login so that you can only log in with a public and private key pair. I'm not going to show you how to disable the login in this video. It's pretty easy to do, so I'll let you look that up if that's something that you want to do. But this will at least show you how to set up the public and private key authentication and just make your life a little bit easier when signing into your server. Anyways, I've gone through a lot here, but let's just dive in. So the first thing we're going to do is see if we already have a public and private key pairing on this machine. Now, the reason we need to do this is because if we do, we don't want to override this. So we're going to type ls and then tilde slash, then dot ssh, and then slash, and after that, id under rs, sorry, not under, but underscore RSA, and then an asterisk. What this is going to do is search for all of the private and public key pairings on our machine. We're looking in the home directory of our user. And again, this is specific to Mac. This isn't going to work on Windows. And we see the .ssh folder. And then we have 2 files, id underscore RSA and id underscore RSA.pub. For you, chances are you don't have any of these files. If you don't, just continue on with the rest of the video. Now, if you do have these 2 files, do not do the following step that don't write the next line that I'm going to write. The reason you don't want to write this line is because this line is going to generate these 2 files. Now, if you generate these 2 files and 2 already exist, you're going to override them. If you override them, you're going to lose your private and public key, which means you will lose access to any machine that requires this public and private key. So again, do not write this line if you have any IDs here or any public and private key already installed on your machine. If you don't have anything, so you type this command and you don't see anything popping up, then you can write the following line. I just want to make sure that's really clear because I don't want any of you guys to lose access to any of your Linux machines. So what we're going to type after this, assuming that we don't have these 2 files again, is ssh hyphen and then keygen and then hyphen b and then 4096. What this is going to do is generate these two files, the private and public key. It's going to store them in our SSH directory, and then with the two following file names you can see right here. By adding this -b 4096, we're increasing the amount of bits or the amount of bytes that we're going to use for our keys just so that it's more secure. So we bumped it up to 4096 as opposed to, I believe, the default, which is 2048. Anyways, we're going to press enter. What this is going to do is generate the public and private key. And now we have the option to encrypt our private key or to save it to a different file. So if you want to save it to a different file, then that's fine. You're not going to override these two files right here. So you could say ID_RSA1 or ID_RSA whatever. You don't even have to call it ID RSA. You can call it whatever you want. If you just hit enter, which is what I'm going to do, by default, it's going to tell you, do you want to override the file that already exists? If it exists. If it doesn't, it will just save to this file name ID_RSA. So I'm going to override my file because I actually don't care about these ones. This was just testing before the video. And then it's going to ask me if I want to enter a passphrase. Now, a passphrase is different than a password. What the passphrase will do is decrypt your key so that it can be sent to the server. So typically you want to have a passphrase just so that if someone gets access to your private key, they're not able to access your server unless they know the passphrase. So I'm just going to make my passphrase like 1234. Something really basic, but again, you would obviously make this more secure. All right, so now our passphrase is in and we've generated our key. Now again, to check where this key is, well, it's just going to be in your .ssh folder, and then you can run this command and well, you'll see it pop up. You also could just cd into the .ssh folder in the user's home directory, and on Mac, tilde again represents the home directory, just like on Linux. Now, if you already had a key file stored, so you already had your ID_RSA and ID_RSA.pub, you don't need to generate a new one. You can just use that same key file for your server. So you can use the same key file for multiple machines. Now, is that recommended? I'm not quite sure. That's up to you. Do you want to use the same one or not? I mean, that's kind of your preference. But if you want to use the same one, you don't need to generate a new one. If you want to use a different one, when you type that command, just be very careful and make sure you select a different file name for the key and you know what that file name is, because that's going to be important in this step. Okay, so now that we have this, we're actually going to SSH into our machine and add this key to it. So to add this key to our Linux machine, we're going to type the following: SSH-copy and then -ID, and then we're going to put the username at and then the server IP address. So I'm going to say root at and then 172.105.25.135. Now your IP address is obviously going to be different, but you're probably going to sign in as the root user unless you want to use one of the other users you've created. So anyways, we'll say SSH copy ID and then the user that you want to add this key for. So I'm going to add this for the root user, but typically you add this for a other user on your machine. You don't usually add these public private keys for the root user, but we're just going to do it for this video. And then you press enter. Now what this is going to do is it's going to copy your public key to your Linux machine. So it's going to ask you for the password for the root user. So type in your root user password or whatever other user you use to sign in here, press enter. And after you do that, all of a sudden, the private and public key will be active on this machine. So you will now be able to sign into your Linux machine without entering a password. Rather, you'll enter the passphrase to decrypt your private key. Now, I know this is a lot of information. Just to reiterate here, typically you don't do this for the root user. I'm just doing it for the root user for this video just because it's easier and I forget the other users that I've created, to be honest with you. But usually you would create a new user that would be a sudo user. So you would add it to the sudo group. Then you would do this for that user. Anyways, I just wanted to make sure that's clear that traditionally this is not done for the root user. So anyways, now we've added that key. So what we're going to do next is we're going to see how we actually sign into the machine now. So now on Mac, to actually get into this device, we're going to say SSH and then our username, so root, and then whatever the server IP address is. So actually, I'll just copy this right here and remove the copy ID. So SSH, root, and then at. And when we do this, it's going to ask us for the passphrase for our private key, which is stored in this file. So you type in the passphrase to decrypt it, and then it should just automatically log you in to the server. So now notice I didn't have to type in a password. I used the public and private key pair to sign in. So that's how that works. And that's the point of using this public private key, is now you don't need a password to sign into the device. You simply just have this key stored locally on your machine, and that's automatically passed to the Linux machine when you sign in. Then what you would do after this is you would remove the ability to sign in with a password from this machine, so that the only way you can get access to this Linux device is if you have that private key. Anyways, again, I'm not going to show you how to deactivate that, but that is what you would traditionally do. Now let's head over to the Windows machine and I'll show you how to do this there. Now we'll move on in 1 second, but I need to quickly thank the other sponsor of this video, which is Algo Expert. Algo Expert is the best platform to use when preparing for your software engineering coding interviews. They have a data structures crash course, a mock interviews feature, and over 115 coding interview questions, some of which are taught by me. Get started using Algo Expert today by hitting the link in the description and using the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. All right, so now I'm back here on Windows. I'm going to show you how we can do the same thing except on Windows. Unfortunately, Windows doesn't have as nice of commands to do this, so it's a little bit more involved, but still not too complicated. Anyways, there's going to be a link in the description for this software called PuttyGen. Now, what this software is going to allow us to do is generate a public and private key pair that is specific for Putty. So we're going to use Putty to sign in, obviously, as we've been doing this whole time. And specifically, we're going to use a Putty private and public key pair. So PuttyGen generates this for us. So go to the link in the description and just scroll down to kind of the middle of the page. And you should see an MSI installer for Putty. And then if you keep going, you should see PuttyGen, a piece of software popping up right here. So where you see PuttyGen, you're going to download the 64-bit or 32-bit, depending on what operating system you're on. And again, this is only going to work on Windows, this method. All right, so now I'm just going to download this to my desktop, and then we'll run puttygen.exe. So we run puttygen.exe, and we can see that it says no key, and there's a button called generate. So what we're going to do first is we're going to change the size of our private key, or our key in general, to be 4096. So let's change this to 4096 and make sure that RSA is selected. That's the type of key that we want. Now what we're going to do is we're going to press generate. And when we press generate, it's going to say generate some randomness by moving the mouse around the blank area. So literally just move your mouse around, and that's how you're going to generate the random key, which I think is hilarious, but that's how you do it. Just move the key around. So now it says that we have our public key, and we should also have a private key as well. What we can do is enter our passphrase. So again, this is just to encrypt the key. So I believe this has to be at minimum 5 digits. So I'm going to enter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what we're going to do is save the public key and save the private key. So I'm going to save the public key. It's going to ask me where I want to save it. Now it's important that when we save, the public key, we save this as a .txt file. Now, you'll see why in a second, but anyways, just save this as a .txt file. So we're going to say public-key or whatever we want to call it, and then .txt. I'm just going to save this on my desktop. And in fact, you know what, let me make a folder here and I'll just call this tutorial. And there we go. We'll save it inside of here. Okay, so there we go. We have our public key saved, and now we want to save our private key. So when we save the private key, notice that the file extension is ppk. Make sure you keep the ppk. We need that as the file extension for this. Now we can again name this whatever we want. I'll just say private-key and click save. All right, so now that all that's done, I've saved the 2 keys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first navigate to those. So desktop and then tutorial, and I have my keys right here. So we'll just leave this kind of open on the side of our screen. And now I'm going to open up Putty. So let's open up Putty, and what we're going to do is we're going to load our session. So we'll load tutorial like this, and then we're going to go to the connection tab in Putty. We're going to go to SSH. We're going to expand SSH and go to auth. And then inside of auth, we are going to select our private key file. So where it says private key file for authentication, we're going to press browse, and we're going to look for it on our machine. So this is in desktop, tutorial, private key. So we're going to press open. Now this is why we had to have the ppk extension, because this is specific for Putty. A Putty private key is what that stands for. All right, so now that we've done that, we're going to go back to our session. We're going to press save on tutorial so that we save this private key with our session. So now every time we open the session, the private key will automatically be passed so that we don't need to do it manually. All right, so now we're going to load this session or open this session. So let's open it, and it's going to ask us to log in. So we're going to log in as we normally would. We're going to log in as root. It's going to say that our key was refused. That's fine because we don't have the public key yet on this server for this machine. Then we're going to type in the password. So I'll type in my root password. All right, so I'm now signed into my Linux machine. What we're going to do now is we're going to add the public key to this machine. Now, you need to make sure you follow these steps precisely because you can mess this up very easily. And if you already did this on Mac, and I guess if for some reason you're following along with Windows, a lot of these commands you're not going to have to type. Now, if you're just doing this on Windows, unfortunately, we don't have these nice commands like we have on Mac to just automatically add this. So there's a bit more work that we need to do. But anyways, we're inside of the server now. What we're going to do is we're going to first check and see if we currently have a .ssh folder in the user's home directory. So by default, we're in the user's home directory. We're going to try to cd into the .ssh folder. So if this works, this means you have a .ssh folder. You can skip the step that I'm about to do. So if that doesn't work though, and you don't have an SSH folder, you need to make one. So you're going to say mkdir and then .ssh. So you're going to make a new folder called .ssh. Once you've made this new folder, again, I'm not making it because I already have one, you're going to cd into it. So cd into .ssh. Once you're inside of .ssh, you're going to make a new file. This new file is going to store your public key. So you're going to say touch and then the name of the file, in which this case it is authorized keys. So touch authorized keys only if you didn't have this SSH folder already. If you already have this SSH folder, do not do this. Okay, so now we make this authorized keys file. Once we make this authorized keys file, what we need to do is cd out of this folder. So cd ... and we now need to set the permissions for this folder and for this file. The reason we need to do this is when you log in using your SSH keys, well, these folders and files just need to have set permissions. I'm not a Linux expert enough to explain exactly why we need all these permissions, but this is just what you need to do. Just trust me, this is the proper permissions you need to set. So what we're going to type now is chmod and then plus, a plus and then rwx and then comma g minus rwx and then o minus rwx, and this is going to be for the ./.ssh folder. Now you can just do .ssh as well, and it would be helpful if you spell SSH correctly, and you're going to set this permission for this folder. Again, only do these steps if when you first logged in here, you didn't have the SSH folder and you didn't have that file that I told you to create. So run this command, and then after you run this command, you're going to run another command. So you're now going to cd into this folder, so cd into .ssh, after you set the permissions that I just defined, and you're now going to set the permissions for the authorized keys file. So you're going to say chmod and then a plus rwx, then u minus x, and then g minus rwx, and then o minus rwx. So you're just setting very specific permissions for who can access, read, and execute this file. So do this. Then press enter, set this for this file. So the file, we should type the file out, is going to be authorized keys. And once you've done this, now you're good. We now need to add the public key to this file. So again, all the stuff I just showed you, you're only doing if you didn't have this SSH folder when you first logged into this machine. Okay, so chmod, a plus rdwx, u minus x, g minus rwx, o minus rwx, authorized keys, run that command. Okay, now that we have the permissions set for this file, and if you're on Mac and you're still watching this, just by default, Mac does this for you, so you didn't need to do it. Now we need to add our public key to this file. So we're going to say nano and then authorized keys. Now, nano is just a text editor on Linux. It's going to open up this file. Now, notice that I have a key inside of this file. The reason I have this key is this is the SSH key from my Mac when I just added it. Now, you won't have this. You'll likely just have nothing in this file because it's an empty file. What you're going to do is you're going to go and find your public key that you saved in the text file, and you are going to copy it, not the comment, just the key. So you don't want the comment or the end or anything inside of the hyphens here. So we're going to take this key, we're going to go to PuTTY, and we're simply going to paste it in. Now to paste this, you actually right-click with your mouse. So you right-click it like that, and it should paste it into this file. So now that this is pasted in, we're going to go actually before this key. Sorry, we should have done this before. And oops, I just want to go to the beginning of this line here, and I need to preface all of this with SSH-RSA. So SSH-RSA, and then whatever your key is. Now I'm hoping this is all on one line. This needs to all be on one line. I don't know why the text file copied this into multiple lines, but unfortunately you are going to have to put this all in one line. So maybe you can be more clever than me and not do it the way that I'm doing, but you need to make sure there's no escape characters here. And I'm just going to fast forward through me putting this on one line, but make sure it's on a single line. All right, so now it's all on one line. Once it's all on one line, I apologize about that, guys. We're just going to save. So Control S and then Control X. And now you have this public key in your server. So now what you need to do is you need to log out and then you can log back in, and you should just automatically be authorized because you've done this correctly and you added the public key. So now we can log out or we can exit. And what I will do is go back to PuTTY. So let me go now back to PuTTY here. And inside of PuTTY, I'm going to load tutorial. Now notice when I load tutorial, if I go to SSH and then auth, my private key file is saved. That's why we saved that before. Anyways, now I will open. And when I open, I can type in my username and it should just automatically authenticate me. So it says authenticating with public key, and then passphrase for key is this. So what I'm going to say is my passphrase, and now it should log me in. It logs me in and we are all good. So now we have our public and private key authentication set up. Next, I'm going to show you how to access this server over FTP, so using a file transfer protocol. First thing, you need to download an FTP client. You can pick whatever you want. I'm just going to go with FileZilla because it's kind of the most known and it works on Mac and Windows. It's actually not my favorite FTP client. I usually use WinSCP, but that's only for Windows, so I didn't want to use that in this video in case any of you guys are on Mac. So anyways, go download FileZilla. I'll leave a link to it in the description, or whatever FTP client you want for that matter, and then open it up. So I've got FileZilla right here, and I'll just show you how to use FileZilla to connect to your server, and I'll show you what an FTP client kind of looks like. So let's make this full screen. I'm going to put in my server IP address. Now I'll be back. I'm just going to grab that. All right, so I've got the IP address in here. Then you're going to type in your username. You type in the password as well. So type in the root password, and then put port 22 in here and just press quick connect. Now, this will work if you have the user password enabled on your machine. Again, you can disable this. I'm not going to show that in this video though. And if you just press quick connect, you should sign into your machine. And now you can actually see all the files on your machine that are accessible for this root user. So now you could manually delete them. Like I can just delete the file. I can add a new file. I can also drag files from my machine, which is on the left-hand side of the screen here, over onto my Linux machine. So there's a really easy way to take files and transfer them to the device or transfer them to the Linux machine. And from the Linux machine, you can drag files and transfer them back to your local machine. So that's FTP, super straightforward. I'll also show you how to use your public private key from FTP. So to do that in FileZilla, you need to go to, where is it here? There's somewhere that says settings. I believe it's server. So let's disconnect first actually. And let me try to find the settings here because there is something to do. So if you go and edit actually, and you press settings, then what you can do is you can go to SFTP, and in SFTP, you can add your key file. So I'm going to add my key file. I'm going to find this. I believe this is on my desktop. So desktop, tutorial, and private key. I'm going to add that here, and then that should be good. So I'm going to press OK now. And now when I access my server, I should be able to just put in the username, port 22, and connect using the private key. So now it asks me for the passphrase for this key. So notice I didn't put in the password for the root user. And what I will do is just put in the passphrase and press OK. And then it should sign me into the server just like before. And there you go. We're signed in using the public private key. So that's actually all I wanted to cover in this video. I hope this was helpful to you. After this, you should probably disable the password authentication or login for your server. Again, I apologize I'm not showing that, but I just think it's something that you guys can find on your own if you want to do it. It's really simple, and I don't want to do it for my server because I still would like to be able to log in with my password, so I don't want to go through all the steps in this video. Anyways, I hope you guys found this useful. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in another YouTube video.